Hello all, Creeparoni here. What you'll hear in this video are submissions to my Halloween Creepypasta contest. You can show your support for the stories you like most by commenting below, and your feedback will help me decide a winner on October 28th, 2016. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy what these talented writers have to offer. I don't understand what happened that day. It still haunts me to this day. Even after 3 years, it won't leave my mind. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. It was 3 years this October that I encountered something evil. It was during the night at 11 p.m. I used to live down the mountain when my dad used to work until he had an accident which got him injured. So anyway, he left for work in the day as I watched our previous house. It was around 11 p.m. when I finished cleaning up as I was going to use the bathroom. I opened the door of the old room, and as I looked into the hallway, I flipped the light switch, and that's when I saw a tall figure standing at the end of the hallway. I was like, oh my god, someone broke in, which was unlikely because the door had 4 locks on it, and I have super hearing, which means I would hear someone messing with the locks. I grabbed the bat that I had next to my door as I got myself ready to attack whatever this was. Hey! I called out to the person, but they just kept staring at the ground. Hey! What the fuck are you doing in here? I called again as I raised the bat behind my back as I watched them for any sudden movements. I was met with silence as they finally looked up, and what I saw still haunts my mind when I sleep. The figure raised their head, and it was all black. It was an all-black shadow, no features at all. The eyes were what scared me the most, though. Have you ever looked into a flashlight, and the bright light filled your vision? That's what the eyes were. Bright, blinding white light. I felt every hair on my body stand up. I couldn't blink. I couldn't move as this figure was watching me. Their eyes watched me, even though it had no pupils. It tilted its head as it kept watching me like a hawk, as I felt my eyes burning. I didn't understand why it was here and why it didn't try to move. Suddenly my cell phone went off, and the figure disappeared, and I was jolted out of my state of fear and shock. It was my dad. He was on his break asking me if I was okay. He said he had a bad feeling about me while he was working, and he was trying to call for an hour, but his cell phone kept cutting out. I told him what happened as I walked all over my house, looking in closets, rooms, and the kitchen. As I made my way back to my room, I looked up above my door and I finally noticed the cross that was above my room door. My dad told me that he put it there years ago. He got it from church. It was from the priest that was giving them out. Each one was blessed by him and had been dipped in holy water. My dad is an usher in church, and he goes to the Sunday masses when he can, but ever since we moved to our new house, I still have that cross above my door. Some weeks later, my dad got injured at work, and I take care of him now. I make sure he takes his pills and eats healthy with all the injuries he has, and yet he still walks around. But I still get the feeling whatever that shadow was, it still wants to get to me. I don't know why, but sometimes when I'm alone in the house, I hear footsteps as if something is searching, like it got lost and it's waiting for me to come out. The chilly Chicago night air seeped through my skin, into my bones, as me and my mother walked home from the pizzeria located on North State Street. I can't tell you the exact time of night it was, but the November sky illuminated so vividly with the bright full moon peering down at us, you could just assume it was too late for your typical mom and son pizza night. My mother has been distraught these past few weeks after the passing of my father. I loved my dad so much, and it's not easy to know he will never be there for me ever again, but I can't let my sadness be too apparent in front of my mother. I've kept my emotions inside, for the most part. I know that I have to protect her. My sense of obligation of taking care of my mother far outweighs the responsibility I have working at the pizza joint near our apartments. I invited my mom over after my shift was done at this pizzeria I work at. My mom needed some food in her system. I've noticed she hasn't eaten much lately. I don't have a vehicle at the moment, so having a job within walking distance of my home is convenient. I wouldn't want to own a vehicle in the city of Chicago anyways, nor would I really feel like even getting one after the recently fatal traffic collision my father was involved in 2 weeks ago. I feel so bad leaving my mom at home while I'm at school and work. I know I could quit my job and just go to school so I could take care of my mother afterwards. The week my manager gave me off after my father's passing was helpful, but I believe after the first week, the worse things get. The initial days of my father's passing, I was mainly in shock. Now, things really seemed to take effect. Like a bad, diluted drug or sleep aid that only took effect once you woke up from a tiresome 2-hour night's sleep. Perhaps after my manager saw my mother and how upset she was tonight, he may give me a few more nights off, or maybe even another week off. However, I shouldn't assume so much. Assuming things is a typical 16-year-old attitude. Assuming everything would work out just fine. Assuming a steady paycheck will always come in and it will be enough to afford the things I want in life. Assuming my parents will always be there for me. Perhaps after the passing of my father, I'm starting to mature a lot faster now. As me and my mother turned the corner of an old brick 5-story apartment building, the autumn air brushed through the tree branches with a cold, ominous howl, making some yellow and gold-colored leaves fall from the branches off towards the ground. The staggered steps my mother takes echo amongst the apartments and down the narrow straight of West Elm Street. In front of us, a couple walking 2 of their dogs, and off to the right, a white car, parallel parked and the hood just touching the bumper of a black car. People all around us in this city always seem to be one step ahead of me and my mother now. It seems like everyone is fast-forwarding their lives. For instance, not taking extra time to park the car without contacting another vehicle. For me and my mother, it seems like we are in slow motion. Like some other being, more powerful than you and I, slowing down the life of me and my mother to see every detail, frame by frame. Almost as if they love to see the sorrow and pain generate through my mother's expressions. Me and my mother get to the steps of our apartment. I softly rest my hand on my mother's right shoulder blade with an ever so slightly push forward to help her up our stairs. My mother not only looked fragile and sad, but I could feel it through her emotions. I felt as though I was in my 40s and I was taking care of a nearly 70-year-old mother. The only thing strong about her was the thick coat of her black cotton jacket she wore. We get inside our apartment and shortly after, I make my mom some of her favorite tea. After about an hour or so of calm chat about our days, my mother starts to get tired. Tonight, she says, she will attempt to sleep a good 8 hours. Before she goes to her room, she tells me, "I don't want you hanging around with Laura too much. Some girls might be after some attention and use you for the fact you have a job and make money. For a 16-year-old managing school, as well as a job and actually making money, my mom assumed that was prestigious enough, that other kids I go to school with don't take the time to get a job. I'll admit, not many kids at my school do. Then again, the ones I hang out with are either on the football team or have extracurricular activities after school." I laugh and say, "Okay, Mom, Laura is a cool, sweet girl and very smart, but don't you worry. In fact, she asked me about how you were doing and wants to come see you. Do you think this weekend can work?" I asked my mom. "Oh, she will see me very soon, I'm sure." "Let's not promise this weekend, but that's sweet she wants to see me," my mom casually says, as if trying to avoid the fact that the love of her life passed away recently. I know that everything my mom does day by day, She is constantly weighed down by the fact that my dad will never be there. She will no longer make dinner for 3. She will no longer have an occasional date night, and she will never look forward to her beloved at-home movie nights with my dad while I was either working or at Laura's house. I know my mom is excited to see Laura, yet I know she is also a little nervous to finally meet her, and my mom probably wants to look her best. Lately, my mom knows she hasn't been looking like herself. In the daytime, she will wear these big black sunglasses to cover up the puffiness of her eyes after she wakes up crying. She's been wearing dark clothes and doesn't go out that much anymore. As a stay-at-home mom, she doesn't need to go to work, but I would like for her to get out more. Perhaps having my girlfriend Laura come over to talk to her during the weekend can be just what my mom needs. A couple of days have passed by and it's finally Friday. My friends are excited for the weekend. Some of them excited for the big game tonight. Others excited to be going to a few big house parties. Me, on the other hand, will have to work over the weekend. It looks as though my manager isn't able to give me any more time off. As I walk out of the school, I see Laura with a few of her friends talking amongst each other. I can tell she was ecstatic that her oral presentation on the high place phenomenon went very well. Laura has always been excited about speeches and doing presentations. I didn't even have to ask how it went. I could just tell she was excited for how well she did. Laura looks slightly over to my direction and turns her body towards me. She waves with a smile not showing her teeth, but a big grin, and she started walking over to me with open arms. Just like with my mother, I avoided being too animated about my father passing away. In fact, I just noticed everything about Laura as she approached me. Nothing bothered me in this moment. Laura's long, synthetic-like silky black hair gracefully brushed past the material of her jacket as a slight breeze whisked it away from her face. I get closer to her, finally in embracing distance. I feel her 2 hands brush past my shoulders and land in the center of my back. I can feel her tiny muscles squeeze me, and I feel on my hands her body wrapped in warm clothing. However, the warmest part of her as we embrace was her skin from her left cheek. Her body temperature contrasted so much with the cold air. Her pheromones cradled my senses in a warm like satin sheet, as if to carry them off to a world far better than the one I live in. I spot what I have noticed before, 2 tiny, lightly colored freckles on the left side of her neck. I used the 2 freckles as a marking point and gently lowered my head towards her neck, softly pressing my lips against her soft skin as I kiss her. I can feel her body tense ever so much, and she squeezes me a bit harder, and I can hear a quiet moan coming from her. We embrace longer. I'm not one for showing off and being too sappy in front of friends, but at this moment, the only ones that mattered in this world were me, my mom, and Laura. I finally walk Laura home. This was a much-needed walk, as I felt like myself again. Laura asked me if we were still up for hanging out at my place this weekend, and asked if we could go see my mom and see how she was holding up. I told her I'd really like to see her. In fact, I'd really could just go for a day of hanging out together, just me and her. I told her I'd really like to see you. In fact, I could really go for a day of just hanging out together, just me and you. I'll let you know once I'm done with work, so you can come over, Laura. I'll see you soon. I arrived home, the apartment quiet. My mom left me a note. Next to it, a red can of paint and a couple new paintbrushes still in their package. The short note read, "Be back in a few hours. Volunteering at the zoo to help paint. I bought extra paint that wasn't needed. Can you take it back to the store when you go to work? Thank you. Love you so much. Mom." I quickly showered, got dressed into my work clothes, and headed to the pizzeria. As I get more than halfway, I remembered that I forgot to grab the red paint and the brushes to take back to the store. Oh well, I thought to myself, I'm sure they'll be open Saturdays for a few hours. I end my shift just after 11 p.m. My boss let me go early. Not bad for a Friday night. Usually I work till 1 a.m. The Chicago citizens usually want their pizza late, but I can't complain. I walk home and As I unlock the door, I hear sobbing inside. "Oh, Mom," I thought to myself. I quickly walk in and follow the sobs of my mother to the living room. She's in a recliner chair, just looking through an old photo album. Of course, it was of us three. Me, my mom, and, you guessed it, my dad. "Mom, it's okay." I gently rub my hand on her back. She replies, "I just hope this doesn't mean I'm going to lose you too." "Mom?" I said out loud, and I questioned myself why she would say that, but assumed she was just acting too emotional, and therefore irrational thoughts came to her mind. I walked her upstairs. I started thinking to myself, just push through these few more weeks. She will get better soon. I take her to her room to calm down. Before I step into the master bedroom, I finally take off my shoes for the day, and I let the cream-colored carpet that is only in my mother's room massage my feet as I walk in. My mom sits down on the bed, eventually laying down. I pick up one of her favorite books she had organized alphabetically with a few other books on her nightstand next to the pillow. I sit down in a rocking chair. As she starts to calm down, most likely due from the presence of me being there, I ask her if she would listen to me read a book I've been meaning to read for the past few months, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain. This being one of her favorites, I figured she would enjoy hearing it read from me. I read just over 5 chapters till I realized my mother's asleep. She must be nearing deep REM cycle at this point. I can just tell from how she is. I walked out of the room and noticed a dim glow coming from downstairs. She must have left the TV on. I get downstairs and walk over to the TV. I get about 5 feet from the television when I notice what is staring back at me with beady eyes. It's a still image of Charles Manson. I noticed it's a documentary of the Manson murders, but the segment which was paused at was of Charles Manson staring back at me. Why was my mom watching this? Why did she have it paused on this image? She didn't even reach for her remote when I came home and saw her crying in the chair. Not once did she even move her hand away from the photo album of the 3 of us. How long did she have it paused there? I quickly ejected the DVD and turned off the television. I headed upstairs to sleep. I wake up to the sound of gushing water from the kitchen faucet downstairs. I look at the clock, 9:30 in the morning. Good time to wake up and make it a long, enjoyable Saturday, even though I'll have to work tonight. I walk downstairs, the kitchen faucet still on and my mother standing over the sink with her body turned away from me. "Good morning," my mother says as she glances back at me and quickly turns her head back to the sink. "Good morning," I said back. I sit down at the kitchen table just to wake up some more. My mom asked, "What time do you have to go to work tonight, honey?" I said, "At 5:15, like always." My mom quickly opened up the dishwasher, quickly tossing a knife into the silverware section of the dishwasher and quickly closing the door. "I can take that paint can and brushes back to the hardware store today. I'm sure they'll be open," I said to my mother. "Oh, don't worry about it. I went to volunteer at the zoo again earlier today to help finish up the painting, and we just had to use that other can I bought. Good thing you didn't take it back yesterday," she explained. "You already volunteered today? Mom, it's just past 9:30. What time was this showtime for volunteering? At the crack of dawn?" I jokingly asked. "Yes," she said. "The zoo opens up today and we just had to finish a rather small section before the public arrived." "Wow, that's pretty early," I say out loud. "Will you be—" And that's when I stopped mid-sentence and noticed a small red smear on my mom's finger. "What is that?" I asked. My mom said, "Oh, just the red paint I got on myself earlier. I'm not the best painter." I walk over to her to get a better look. My mom turns away from me, yet I see more red on her hands and forearm. "Mom, it's all over you. Did you slide down the wall at the zoo after you painted it?" Something didn't sit right with me. Was that blood? Is my mom trying to commit suicide? No, that can't be right. that was pretty dark red. Like a red paint-looking consistency, not like blood. I'll get an occasional nosebleed and it doesn't look like that, I thought to myself. She said, "Let me go up and get some more soap for my bathroom." "Mom, we have some down here in the kitchen," I exclaimed. "That's dishwasher soap. I want pretty-smelling soap I have in my bathroom," she yelled as she ran upstairs. "Mom, get down here, please," I assertively expressed, yet she still doesn't come down. It doesn't say anything. I open up the cabinets below the kitchen sink to grab some more dishwasher soap, and that's when something caught my eye. A red paint can, with paintbrushes still in their original packaging, resting next to the red paint can. "Mom!" I yell out. I stare at this paint can. "I thought you said you used the red paint." And that's when my mind suddenly felt as if my mom was trying to commit suicide. "Mom!" I yell out once more, aggressively, and start to run to get upstairs as soon as possible, knowing that there is a good chance I'm going to catch my mother in the act of killing herself. "Mom!" I cry out loud. "Stop what you're doing up there!" As I turn the kitchen corner, I notice on the wall of the living room above the television in bright red lettering, in all caps, "Helter Skelter." Scattered all over the floor are pictures. I glance down. What I see are photos that will last in my memory for a lifetime. I see a body in these photos. The body is laying on a floor. Blood covered most of the face and the clothing. 2 knives sticking out from the left breast and neck. As I look closer, I notice the dark, silky black hair, and amongst the blood I see who it is. The body in all of these photos is Laura's. I notice the aroma of blood in the air. The strong sense of 1,000,000 copper pennies pierce my nose, and with that, something else catches my eyes. The floor in these photos all have cream-colored carpet that I recognize. These were all taken in my mother's room. As I stand there, with doubt in my mind that it's Laura in the photos, yet I'm also sure it is, I hear casual, slow-paced footsteps coming down the wooden stairs. I can hear the creaking of the wood. Other than that, all is quiet. Then I hear subtle laughter. Laughter from my mother, with a mixture of psychotic mannerism enough to impersonate a demon from the devil himself. My mom, now exposed from the wall covering the stairs, walks over to me as I stand in horror and grief. She says to me, "You're all I have in this world. You're my only son, and I don't want anyone taking you away from me. You'll always be in my heart. If I can't have you in my life, there will be nobody else for me to live for. Do you want that for your mother?" My mom approaches me, and I see on her shirt why she was turned away from me at the kitchen sink. Dried up blood all over the front of her clothes. Laura's blood. "You're a murderer! You've ruined the lives of another family!" The shine of a knife in her right hand is adjusted with the bloody tip slightly pointed outward, towards me. "Quick to throw your mother under the bus, are ya?" she yells. She then says, "I brought you into this world. Let me take you out of it." With a slight laugh, filled with half sorrow, and the other half a murderous mother tone. My mother pulls the knife up and over her shoulder, with the point coming at my body and aimed right for my chest. "Stop!" I yell, and fight or flight takes over. I counter to the left and use my right hand to grab a hold of the knife-wielding wrist and push it down towards the ground. I step in front of her feet to trip her, as I will force my mother to the ground, my left arm pushing her right shoulder blade ever so forcefully towards the center of the floor. She trips on my left foot and I push her down to the ground. With a solid thud that echoes through the home, the gasp of air from my mother was released along with the gushing and squirting sounds of blood. No yelling in pain, only gasps and tense muscle spasms generated from my mother and felt through me. "Mom!" I yell. I move closer to her and roll her over. The knife impaled what looks to be near her heart. I know not to pull the knife out, so I run for the phone and dial 911. The police tell me not to get closer to her. They will be arriving there soon. I ignore the police officer's demands and run back to the living room. I kneel down next to her. My mother, dead in the living room. I can just tell from how still she is. as if I just read her another 5 chapters of her favorite book. The peaceful look on her face, skin generating a pale white color and less body heat from her face. I embrace my mother, noticing the vacancy of a pulse or a beating heart, sets as a reminder to a life long gone, and me, motherless. Another constant conscious reminder rattled my brain like Newton's cradle, that I am motherless and fatherless. I now know the feeling of complete hopelessness and lonesomeness, and the feeling of a mother's cold embrace. The elderly woman stood on her porch watching the crowd in the park. It was a small park. However, it regularly hosted events because of its central location in the city. This one appeared to be some bicycling event. Her neighbors complained about the noise, parking, and litter, but the elderly lady welcomed them. A soft, high-pitched whistle drifted from the open front door, and the dog next door began barking. "It's too early." "Yes, too early. Perhaps in 1 hour. An hour will do," she said to no one, and sat in a rusted metal chair near her door. She rocked back and forth, humming to herself. After a while, when the sun had dropped and the shadows shifted, she stood. "It is time," she thought. The whistle from earlier repeated, but had a lower register, a musical affirmation that it was, indeed, time. She carefully stepped off the porch and walked across the street, her long gray hair flowing behind her in the slight breeze. She had chosen someone long before ever leaving the porch and found him in conversation with 2 other young men. Throughout the day he had visited the various tents and would occasionally leave in a vehicle, only to return with more ice or fruit. She was hopeful the other 2 would leave when she made her request. "Excuse me?" she said in a soft, trembling voice. Bill turned around. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" he replied. The other 2 waited, obviously thinking it would be a quick question, after which they could continue their discussion. "I was wondering if you might be able to help me," she asked in the same soft voice she hoped might be interpreted as frail. It had worked so well in the past. "Yes, how can I help you?" he repeated, thinking the elderly woman might be lost and confused. If so, he would have Alex or Stuart escort her over to the announcer's tent. "I live across the street, and I was wondering if you could help me," she asked. "Did you need some help crossing the street?" he asked. "No, it's just something is wrong across the street, just there." She pointed in a vague direction of her house. "And I was hoping you could help me," she said yet again. Is something wrong at your house? Would you like me to call the police or fire department?" he asked, struggling to hide his irritation. The other 2 better wait, he thought. It would be just like Stuart to take off. "Oh no, nothing like that, no. There is an odd smell coming from my cellar," the elderly woman said. "Cellar? Who has a cellar around here?" Alex said. Bill cut him off with a look before he turned back to the old woman. "Something smells? It could be gas. If so, we should call the fire department and gas company," Bill suggested, dismissing his earlier irritation, given that this could be a serious issue. "Oh my, no," she explained. "Well, it's a little embarrassing, but I think it might be a dead animal. A rodent or something." "A dead animal," he replied. He turned to Alex and Stuart, who seemed to be ready to depart the conversation. Bill held them there with a quick shake of the head. "Where is your house?" "Just there, across the street. Oh, I would be very thankful if you could help me," the elderly woman replied, and again pointed in the general direction of her house. Bill's shoulders sagged, and he let out a small sigh. "Sure, we can take a look," he said, making sure it was clear to Alex and Stuart that they would be going as well. "We?" Stuart asked. "Yes, we," Bill replied firmly. "Oh heavens, I don't want to be a bother for all three of you. If you could just take a quick look, I would be ever so grateful," she said, hoping the other two would take the opportunity and leave. "No, it's fine. We don't mind," Bill told her. "Please, after you." She turned and, with a frown of disappointment, began walking back to her house. She again hoped the other two would sneak away before they arrived at her house. The elderly woman could hear them quietly talking about her. "Why do we have to go?" Alex asked. "You worried she might hit on you?" Stuart said. Bill stopped and swung his left arm sideways, and his large hand smacked Stuart in the stomach with a dull thud. Stuart grunted more from the surprise than pain. "Knock it off. Let's take a quick look and leave. We have too many things to wrap up," Bill said. They walked the remainder of the way in silence. The elderly lady paused at the porch. Bill, taking the hint, walked up and held his arm out for support. She grabbed Bill's arm with a very firm, almost painful grip. When he tensed up, she relaxed her grip. Under the steps, she led them into the house, stopping in the kitchen. Bill looked around. It could be a museum, he thought. A 50s-looking standalone stove and oven sat against the far wall. The washer looked even older, and there was no dryer or dishwasher. The floor was wood, strewn with a couple of threadbare rugs. They were standing next to a two-person table, and next to that was a crude wood slat door set into the kitchen floor. The elderly woman moved to lift the door. "The stairs are just under here," she said. "That is where it smells." "Let me get that," Bill said. The door was not as heavy as it looked and opened easily on shiny, well-oiled hinges. He stepped back, peering into a well of darkness. Bill took a couple of experimental sniffs. "I don't smell anything." "Yes, but you can in the cellar, like a dead rodent. I looked, but I couldn't find it. I can show you if you like," the elderly woman offered. "No, I will take a look. Is there a light I can switch on?" "I'm sorry, it doesn't work, and I tried a new bulb. You can use my flashlight," the elderly woman said and handed Bill an old metal flashlight. Bill took the flashlight. It looked as old as the stove and washer. He thumbed the switch forward, and a weak yellow beam penetrated the cellar's darkness, or tried to. He stepped onto the first crude stair, and it wobbled under his weight. How the hell does she not fall? Bill thought. He stopped after 2 more steps and turned to look at Stuart and Alex. "I'll be right back," Bill said with a look promising dire consequences should he return and find them gone. He continued down the stairs and completely disappeared into the darkness. The weak beam of yellow light showed him little. There was a cellar window at the bottom of the stair, but it had been covered or was so filthy, no light could penetrate. Bill swung the beam left and right. There was a smell, but it was not any dead animal. It was coffee. Why did she say it was a dead animal? Bill muttered to himself. Immediately to his right was a series of wooden shelves. Dust covered everything, including several odd-looking bottles with torn and faded labels. He tried to read one, but the original cursive writing was too faded. An old workbench occupied the opposite wall, littered with rusty tools and an equally rusted assortment of nails, screws, and nuts. Bill turned again and spied the third wall with more shelves, although these held little dust and debris, except for 6 cans of coffee. He walked towards the shelves and noticed the smell of the coffee strengthened. They were all 5-pound cans and filled to the brim without lids. That explained the coffee smell. Ah, she was masking the odor of the dead animal, he thought. It seemed like an expensive way to do it, and who had that much coffee? Not the last weird thing, I bet, he said under his breath. Bill turned again, swinging the feeble beam of yellow light toward the wall behind the stairs. He took a couple of small steps towards the wall. There were no shelves, but there was a door, another crude wood slat door without a doorknob or handle. The hinges looked new, like the door leading into the cellar, but had massive springs. It could be an auto-close mechanism, he thought. Hoping to see if anything was inside, Bill walked to the door and was hit by a horrible stench. He gagged and backed up to the coffee cans, trying desperately not to throw up. He stuck his face over a can and breathed in deeply. "What the hell?" he thought. "That is no dead rodent." He froze when a soft, trilling whistle rolled across the cellar and then stopped. Bill held his breath, straining to listen, but only silence roared back. He stepped forward enough so that the flashlight beams shone on the crude door. He stared at it, as if waiting for something to erupt from behind the door and drag him inside. He wanted to run, but his feet felt rooted in place. He raged at the lack of control willing his feet to move, as he could barely hear a scraping sound beyond the door, like something metallic raked across stone. Bill watched as the door flexed outward, nails and wood protesting the pressure from the other side. He tried again to move, but his feet refused. The whistling began again, then changed register several times, high, then low. It shifted to an even deeper thrumming tone now. The door flexed outward again, and a purplish-brown ooze seeped between the wood slats. The smell was like a physical blow, forcing him to lean back as his feet remained rooted. The tune, yes it was a tune and not random notes, grew louder. His body's reaction to the tune felt like a deep, buried instinctual switch flipped. He ground his teeth, and his forehead dripped with sweat. A chill fired up his spine, and his hands started to tingle. Bill clenched his fists, driving his fingernails into his palms, hoping the pain would free him. Just when he thought he would scream, Stuart bellowed from the top of the steps through the opening above. "You okay down there?" he asked. Bill stood still for several long seconds before he realized he could move again. He wiped his forehead, and his hand came away damp with sweat. He looked around, and all appeared relatively normal. The coffee smell returned. "Yes, I will be right up," Bill replied finally. He returned to the stairs wondering if he had imagined it. He put a foot on the first step when something odd struck him. The position of the stairs in the kitchen, in coordination with the exterior wall, meant that room beyond the door must be well outside the perimeter of the house's exterior walls. "Shit," he thought. "That's all for me." He looked up and saw Stuart looking down at him as he began climbing back up the steps. "What happened? Did you see something?" Stuart asked. Bill did not reply. About halfway up, one of the wood slat steps shifted downwards like a slide. At the same time, the cellar door tried to swing closed, striking him on the shoulder. Alex rushed forward, pushing the door back, and grabbed Bill's arm. If not, he would have been flung back into that well of darkness. "What the hell?" Stuart said. "Are you all right?" Alex asked. Bill remained silent. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time and handed the flashlight to the old woman. Not stopping to say anything, he quickly walked through the house and out the front door. He picked up his pace after stepping off the porch step. By the time he hit the street, he was at a dead run. Stuart and Alex ran alongside him, peppering him with questions, all of which he ignored. None of them looked back at the house where the elderly woman had returned to the porch, staring at them. Bill finally stopped at the medical tent. He looked around the tent as if seeing it for the first time. Still ignoring Stuart and Alex, he grabbed a small bottle of apple juice and sat down on a cot. He popped the top off and downed the entire bottle, wishing it was something stronger. The med tech walked over and asked if he was okay. Alex said he was. He had a bit of a scare, ran into a dog. The med tech looked over Bill's hunched form and suggested he looked to be in mild shock. Bill finally spoke up. "I'm fine. A dog chased me. Must have conjured up some childhood scare. I feel better now. Thanks." "Is it loose? I should let someone know," the med tech said. No, it was on a chain, but I didn't know until it stopped. That'll teach me not to shortcut a corner. Thanks for asking." "Okay, let me know if you feel different," he replied and walked back to his folding table. Stuart started to say something, but Bill held up a hand. "Not here." So all three moved to the comfort tent that was mostly empty. Bill grabbed a banana and ate it quickly. They all sat at a table far from the tent's other occupants. Both Stuart and Alex were opposite him, trying to make eye contact, but Bill's eyes were on the discarded banana peel in front of him. They waited expectantly. Stuart, ever impatient, started to talk. What happened down there? I just had a scare, that's all, Bill offered. Bullshit. You didn't look scared. You ran out of there like something was chasing you, he said. Bill's gaze flitted around the tent. Shut up, Stuart, Alex said. You're not helping. Bill, Alex said. Bill. Bill finally looked at Alex. What happened? Bill peered around the tent again, not out of fear, more like he wanted to see who was in earshot. He took a deep breath and began talking. He covered everything, the coffee, the smell, the door flexing, and the tune. Alex kept Stuart from interrupting, so Bill was able to cover the whole encounter without distraction. When he finished, he placed his palms on the table as an indication. He was done, and being honest. Alex jumped in before Stuart could say anything. So, what do you want to do? I don't know. What can I do? You can tell the fucking cops for starters, Stuart interjected. And tell them what? Alex challenged. That he thinks there's a creature in that old lady's cellar? Well, not a creature, but the smell could indicate something is wrong. I'm not talking to the cops, Bill said resolutely. Stuart slapped the table in frustration. Don't be a pansy, he said, but regretted it immediately. The other people in the tent looked at the three of them for a moment, then returned to their conversations. Bill said in a harsh whisper, Fuck you, Stuart. How about you pop over there and have a peek in that cellar? You'll wet your pants before you're halfway down those creepy-ass steps. Stuart stood up and left the tent in a huff. With Stuart gone, Alex asked Bill again, What do you want to do? Nothing, just forget it happened. Whatever is going on in that cellar is the old woman's problem. I think she is aware of it, Bill said, then stood and walked out of the tent. Several minutes later, the old woman reappeared on the front porch. So unfortunate, the elderly woman thought, and sat down to watch the thinning crowd in the park as the afternoon moved towards the twilight hour. It was nearly dusk when she smiled again as the piping started up. She exited the porch and approached a solitary cyclist walking his bike out of the park. After a few moments, both headed back to her house. She suggested he leave his bicycle in the side yard so nothing would happen to it while he was helping her. He leaned it against the side of the house, then swapped his bike shoes for sandals and his riding shades for his normal glasses. Back around the corner, he climbed the steps and followed the elderly woman inside. I'm so grateful for your help. Are you sure I'm not keeping you from getting home to your family? She said. No, nothing like that. I was just going to ride to the train station to catch the train south for another ride in 2 days. I still have a couple of hours, so I have some time, he explained. She led him into the kitchen and stopped at the small table. Wonderful. I haven't taken a train in quite a while. And you take your bike and backpack. That is very convenient. Yes, very. Saves me a lot of gas as well, he replied. So is this the door? Yes, the light doesn't work, but here's a flashlight. She handed him the same flashlight from earlier. He looked it over. Wow, this might be an antique, but it looks brand new, he said. Oh, I've had it for years and years. I just don't use it often. He lifted the door and stepped down into the darkness. He inspected the shelves and coffee cans before heading to the door. He sniffed twice and could catch just a trace of something foul, but his hay fever was on high, as it was after most rides. He stepped right up to the door and heard a scraping sound, followed by very high-pitched whistling. Maybe she had put her teapot on the stove to offer him some tea. He tried to open the door, but there was no handle, and the gaps in the boards were too small to provide purchase. He stepped back and turned to find something to pry the door open. His eyes began to water, followed by the familiar burning sensation in his nose. He let loose a tremendous sneeze, propelling him forward. His sandal caught in a crack in the cellar floor, flicking it off his foot. Adjusting his glasses, he bent over to pick up his sandal, setting it next to his foot. Before he could put it on, his sinuses began to crackle and opened. He took in a full breath, and the smell caused him to bend over and retch. He stopped and wiped his mouth, deciding it was time to leave. Behind him, he heard a snap, a squeak of springs, and a bang. At the same moment, the door above him slammed closed. Before he could turn around, something struck him mid-back, and he felt something sticky seep through his shirt onto his skin. He was pitched forward, then yanked backwards off his feet. The force dislodged his glasses, his flashlight, and his other sandal. The speed was incredible, like falling sideways attached to a horizontal bungee cord. After a millisecond of acceleration, he was through the wood slat door, and it slammed immediately closed after he was behind it. The piping began a moment later, drowning out the muffled screams of the man. When dusk gave way to a dark, moonless night, the elderly lady pushed an expensive-looking bicycle across her backyard and into the garage. They were so much easier to dispose of as parts. Despite the basement's sealed windows and the piles of dirt covering the exterior opening, she could hear the melodious piping coming from the cellar. She smiled and began disassembling the bicycle, while humming in tune with the piper's song.